A new brand in the NSL, Canadian women's national team picking up a win and a draw. The men's team about to take on France and the Netherlands. The CPL action, MLS action, and oh, yeah, a new coach in York. There's a lot to get to, so let's get to it right now. This is Footy First. That's right, folks. Nick McVicker, Niko Giantsopoulos, back with you. Niko, how you doing, my man?
Doing good. Wearing a hat today. My hair is, I don't have much hair on the top of my head, but it gets long in length, not in fullness. But anyways, I've been staying true. My dad has cut my hair for as long as I can remember. And now I'm out here in Vancouver and he's not here. So every single time I go back to Toronto, whether it's when we play Hamilton or York,
Yeah.
I get him to come to my hotel and cut my hair. So it's just ridiculous right now. So I got this hat on right now to cover it up. But yeah, came back from Winnipeg this weekend. Tough result. Back to work today after a loss. Doesn't feel the best. But doing footy first sometimes cheers me up. So good to be on. Good to see you, Nick. How are things with you?
Good, man. Busy, but good. I can't really complain too much about it. It's been kind of a hectic last couple weeks for my family, and now just trying to get everything sorted for the upcoming weekend, which is going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot of footy to talk about, and I mean, we can start with the Canadian national teams. We could start with, I don't know, maybe some CPL talk or MLS talk. But you know where I want to go? Let's start with York United because they brought in a new manager this week, new head coach. And while I love to talk to just you about this, Niko, we have so many more people that we want to bring in. In fact, we have one on the line right now joining us, Thomas Hewitt, joining the show right now. And he is from the Canadian Soccer Daily and Walking the Red. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Of course, I'm really happy to be here and talk all things York national team, CPL. As you say, there's a lot to talk about, so yeah, it should be fun.
There really is, and why don't we just jump right into it because we already said it. York United announces their new manager, Benjamin Mora, former Atlas FC manager, becomes the third full-time manager of the Nine Stripes following Jimmy Brennan and Martin Nash. He had his big press reveal this week. You were there. What is the vibe kind of around this signing for you, Thomas?
I think, a lot of people don't totally know what to expect from him right now. Obviously, he's managed for Atlas and Liga MX. That's a big club with some recent success. A few years back they won the Apertura and the Clausura in one season. But at the same time, his most successful managerial stint, his longest managerial stint, came in Malaysia, which is not many people necessarily know enough about that league and the level of play there to really kind of compare what he did in Malaysia, which is four Malaysian Premier League titles in 7 seasons, I believe, with Johor, to the CPL. And how is that all going to shape up with the CPL? We have seen that he won an Asian Champions League group, in a pretty difficult one too. So that's definitely a positive. And ultimately, he has a lot of experience. When you look at the past hirings, obviously Jimmy Brennan and Martin Nash, former national team players, but maybe not necessarily the same experience as managers as Mora, right? So he's definitely coming in with a very much a managerial perspective as opposed to maybe one of a player.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very different profiles between York's previous managers as opposed to Mora coming in. For you, what's the vibe like within York United now? Did they feel like this change was needed? And obviously, he's just coming now, but when a new coach comes into a club, it's immediate. It's very impactful that the vibe in the club changes just from that press conference. And I don't know if you were able to be a part of his first training session, but did it feel like there was already a change within the club?
I think that the Pascals and the general manager Jorge Villalpenzo are are very excited about this. This is a guy that they have, tabbed as a success for Martin Nash for some time now. He is their guy. So for them to go out and get him and continue to have their influence, over the club, as he's also from Mexico. So that's now basically all the people decision makers within the club are Mexicans in terms of sporting directors, GMs, coaches. There's 3 Mexican players now, so that influence and identity is much more drilled in to the club right now. So they're definitely happy about it. This is a huge win, for the Pascals and Villalpando. As for the players, I'm not totally sure. I think it's going to take a few matches under him and a few training sessions under him to really get a grasp of what they think. But I think that the owners are certainly happy because, again, this is their guy.
So you mentioned that this may have been sort of in place for a while now. You're around the club a lot. You speak with a lot of the media members. How far in advance was this really in place? Are we talking preseason, or is this more like the start of the season this was starting to be talked about?
No, so this was I don't know the exact date, but if you do remember, Martin Nash and his whole staff were extended
Yeah.
in the offseason. It was a few days after the owners were announced. Um, After kind of the season started very slowly, they had and the Pascals had got to see in person, what does the Nash team look like? What strategies does he have? How do the players play under him? How do they react to him? Uh, which there's nothing in my opinion. I don't think there's anything too negative about that. To be honest, this came completely out of the blue. But they they had some disagreements. That was the thing that Ricardo was saying in his first availability after making the firing of Nash official. He said, they had different philosophies on how the game should be played, and so I think he wanted someone that maybe he could work closer with, that he could also talk to and advise on the tactics, formations, all of that. Um, so that this wasn't made like in the last 2 weeks, but it also wasn't made before the season. As right in that sweet spot after York, did start slow.
And well, you kind of mentioned there, and also in the press release, Ricardo mentioned that they didn't agree with the style of play, and that wasn't
Mhm.
the style of play that they wanted their club to be playing. They wanted a different style, I suppose, to what Nashi was bringing with Benjamin Mora coming in. What style can fans expect this New York United side to be playing?
Well, we saw on canpl.ca, I think it was Charlie O'Connor Clark who did a piece, with more with some good quotes from more and explaining how he likes his teams to play. Uh, high pressure, very intense off the ball, it seems. But with the ball, he wants to hang on to it and he wants to have maybe more of a structure and more control over matches that that hasn't necessarily had recently. We saw, they've played Forge 3 times this season and have conceded 3 goals in each of them. And there's not that much, maybe it's not as much about composure, it is just like organization. So I think Mora really wants like the competitiveness in game to increase, to go up. And that's at the end of the day, I think what we're going to see a lot more of, high press. And I think it said like he likes his teams usually in maybe like a 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. I'm pretty sure it's one of those formations. So we could also see maybe some of the fullbacks like a Max Ferrari, who obviously Niko you've played with, Max Ferrari or Juan Cordova or Orlando Mateo, maybe inverting and joining the midfield and more attacking down the wings potentially.
So,
And
and Nick, not to cut you off there, but you kind of got into it. But do you think that style of play, York's the players of York United, that fits the profile of them to play that style, or do you think they're going to need to get different kinds of players to fit the profile? Because obviously, this team that he's inherited right now was built by Nashi to kind of fit Nashi style of play, but now it's getting a whole new style of play. Do these players are they going to be versatile enough to suit this style? in your opinion, since you're a York United insider?
Well, I mean, it's a fair question, but I think all the kind of signs point to like they are because one of the things watching this team that I find York kind of limits themselves in the way they build up. They're they attack very much through the middle, and it's hard to play down the middle of the pitch. We York has guys like Prem Sumaro, Josue Martinez, very good central players, and Austin Ricci who can drop back as a second striker. Have some interplay with Brem or Martinez or Elijah Adekugbe, who's got a couple starts recently. But the profiles from the wingers they have, your Selenoviches and Patelos down the left, or Ricci moving out wide. Obviously, Mobabuli has an injury right now, which pretty unfortunately timed. He came off a Player of the week, and then just suffered a few back knocks, and it's reoccurring right now. So we don't really know his return date, but I think that York can play horizontally, and I think they more switch balls, more long balls coming out of the back and playing down those wings. I think is definitely in their arsenal and in their toolkit.
In
They just don't
conversation
do
with
it as much.
Sorry, Thomas. In conversation with Thomas Hewitt from Canadian Soccer Daily, you mentioned the different style of play that could potentially be coming with this new signing. Is there any players that you really think are going to benefit from that tactical change? I mean, we've seen some really good success from the York attackers so far this season when everyone's clicking, but is anyone really going to stand out with the new attacking mentality?
Well, I think we still kind of have to give it some time. I'd imagine that the three Mexican players do benefit in some way. Maybe they all speak Spanish. Maybe communication helps too. Like that could be a big factor on the pitch. How is Mora going to be communicating with Martinez Patello and Oswaldo Leon, who's returning from an injury right now. But I think if they do play on the wings, I think he could identify a guy like Ferrari and push him further up the pitch, because the thing with Ferrari that's always kind of baffled me a bit is that his had such a breakout offensive season in 2021 and was runner up for U21 Player of the Year in the CPL. And
You got
then
robbed.
the next, yeah, there you go,
Should
right?
have won that one.
And then the next year, I know that there's injuries. I know he had some injuries of his own, but then he starts playing fullback and at times left back. And I've always thought that you're kind of limiting a very promising attacking talent with a lot of energy, and we know that he has the stamina to drop back and make his presence known on defense. So maybe add another body into the midfield. Maybe it's Ferrari and convert him to more of a wing back, something like him and Cordova on each side, or him combining with Cordova. That seems like a pretty good duo that we've seen. So maybe those two, especially as a tandem, could really make noise down the stretch.
Interesting. What players do you feel, if any, when a new coach comes in, is now feels like, oh, this is like a clean slate? Maybe they weren't getting on with Martin Nash, or Martin Nash didn't prefer them. Is there any player in particular in that locker room that this might be he gets a fresh start, another chance to kind of prove himself?
I think there's a couple of guys who maybe haven't got starts when they easily could have. Looking at Kane Martin Peru and Marky Wojtkowski. Wojtkowski started in the first match of the season, but he had an injury, and ultimately that has kind of parlayed into very few selections and very few minutes. And obviously, you need U21 minutes in this league, and Mora might be new to that, so he might be pushed to out of Wojtkowski. Obviously, Noah Batney's done the heavy lifting for U21 minutes, but if something were to happen to him, then Marky's probably the first off the bench. But also Martin Peru, Nash really likes Martin Peru, but he was kind of been used as more of like a super sub, if anything. Although we saw at the end of 2023 some great 90-minute performances. I think back to against Vancouver in the final game of the regular season, that playoff clinching game, and he was just electric up and down the touchline. So I think those two especially this might be their lucky break to break back into the starting 11.
What about Mora's staff? I mean, a new coach comes in. Sometimes he comes with his own staff members that he's worked with in the past. You got Mauro there as the assistant. Is it fair to say that the Pascal brothers have full confidence in Mauro and also want him to be a part of the project moving forward?
We'll have to see what they do in the off season. I think what they do with the full off season is going to be very interesting. But as of right now, we know that Mauro's staying on board as the assistant coach, and Camilo's staying on board. Camilo Benzi is staying on board as the goalkeeping coach. Obviously, they had those multi-year extensions in the off season, so I think as of right now, the plan is to stick with them. There's not, I don't think there's gonna be any change in like the backroom staff, like the fitness staff, anything like that. I'm pretty sure they're gonna have the same strength and conditioning coach and everything like that.
Nick, any more York
No, you
questions
kind of
for
asked my
Tom?
question there, Niko, so I'm good.
Yeah, jump to it. Thomas, I kind of want to get into just quickly a little bit about you. I mean, talk about how you kind of got on this journey of being not only a York United insider reporter, but also, I mean, just a Canada soccer reporter. I mean, you're now a well-known name in the media space. Where the hell did you come from?
Well, it started in couple years ago, so in 2022, and I'd just gotten kind of into soccer like the past 2 summers. So I had stumbled across York United, and as a smaller club in CFC, I thought, okay, that's interesting. So 2022 schedule comes out, tickets go on sale, and then I go for one game, and immediately it's just like I'm hooked like immediately. And I know Niko, I
Who'd
know
you go with? Who'd you go to the game with? No, it's not like you drove over.
I
And,
no, I went with my dad, but
okay,
I was, like, with, like, the Northern Quarter. You know them,
yeah.
Nice.
obviously, some great guys, so that was kind of the start, and then from there, like, I've been doing sports writing, like, for a while, like, it's always been kind of a dream of mine, so I had, like a Substack and everything, and from that game on, I decided, like, I'm gonna start writing about York because this is it doesn't seem like they have a lot of coverage. Maybe this is like, you know, get a foot in the door here that can lead to anything really. So I did, and then next year comes around, um, the media manager, communications manager at York, and so he sent me the link to apply for media accreditation before the 2023 season. So I went for it. Obviously anything could have happened. He could have easily said no if there's heavy demand, but he approved it, and from then it's just been about you know emailing Canada Soccer people to get on their mailing list, get credentials to those games. Last night I was at the Canada versus Mexico match in Toronto, which was a lot of fun, and yeah, it's really happened very fast in the span of like 18 months, but it's been crazy. But I've loved all of it.
And how old are you? Or what grade are you in?
15.
15. What grade
I'm
is that? Is that
15
grade nine?
at the end of grade 9. Yeah.
Wow.
At the end of grade nine. I mean, you got a full-time job. You got to be the only ninth grader that's already. You should be telling. Do you take any like journalism classes? Do you like just basically school your teacher? It's like, hey, sir, give me that pencil. I'm teaching the class today. I mean, you have more experience than probably some of your journalism teachers. This is
I
insane.
mean, we don't even really have like a journalism class. Like the closest thing that would come to that is like English, but
I
that's,
was gonna say it's still
pretty
grade
different.
9. You haven't specialized. You don't have
Yeah, there's
specialized
no
classes yet.
specialized. It's just like straight up the classes. Your English is math, science, all that.
You're still learning how to type in grade nine, and you got newspapers. Awesome, good for you, Thomas.
That's
Nick,
awesome, Thomas.
Thank
anything from
you.
you?
No, I just want to say I really appreciate you jumping on with us today, man. Yeah, I loved your insight, and we'll definitely get you back on soon.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thomas Hewitt from Walking the Red and Canadian Soccer Daily. Appreciate you jumping on, man. All right, Niko, let's keep it rolling here, my guy, as we got a lot to get into, and let's head straight into the second thing that we wanted to talk about. And this is kind of like what we did last week, because last week we talked about your perfect goalkeeper from the CPL, and now we're kind of going with my side of specialty here, and that's because, well, we're going with the starting
I think
11 for
we
the
gotta
men's.
mute Thomas here. Thomas, I still hear him.
I don't. You're good.
Oh.
I don't hear him. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm just make sure it's not a hot mic moment.
No,
And
you're
just
good.
Hops says, man, I just got off those losers podcast. I hate those guys.
No, we're good. But let's get into the Canadian men's team. They got two big matches coming up this week. Ooh, flip this over this way. Two big matches coming up this week, Niko. We got France and we got the Netherlands. First, obviously, Netherlands, and then France on the weekend. And I wanted to kind of get into what you did last week with your ideal goalkeeper in the CPL. We're going to do my ideal 11. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to rhyme off my 11. I'm going to show you the formation that I have first and then rhyme off the 11 and then put the formation back up. Okay? Does that make sense?
Coach McVicker, take it from here.
Perfect. All right. So my formation, it's a little bit different. I know it probably isn't one that is going to be used, but I love this formation. I think it's very versatile. And that's why I would go with a 3-4-2-1. 3 at the back, 2 wing backs with 2 center mids, 2 attacking mids, and 1 striker up top. That's my formation. It's right there on the screen, Niko. You can see it. Everyone at home can see it. But let's jump back to us and let's get into who my 11 actually is, because this is going to be a lot of fun. So in net, I'm going with Dane St. Clair. I know Crépeau's healthy. I know he's been playing really well when he has been in the games, but he hasn't been getting a ton of playing time. Dane St. Clair's on a streak right now. I think going into this, he's the healthier of the two anyway. I'm going to go with him, but those two are a toss-up for me. I could easily go with Crépeau in net. What are your thoughts on that?
I like that. Both. Before we go further into this, do you believe that there's going to be the same? If you were the coach,
yeah,
and you play Netherlands and France,
okay,
are you going to go with 2 different starting 11s? This is kind of everyone's chance to prove themselves, or are you going to stick with similar starting 11s for both games?
I would, if it was me, I'd probably go with similar starting 11s, maybe with a couple squad rotations, guys that you want to get a view of. I mean, we have a lot of attackers, so there's Theo Bear. They just brought in, oh my goodness, Tawny, can't say his last name, from Minnesota.
Minnesota United,
yeah, the Minnesota guy. He's on fire right now. You have David, you have Laren up top as well. Like tons of stuff going on. He has a lot of options up front, Jesse Marsh does, so I could see some rotation there just to get a look at some of these guys, especially the Bears and the Minnesota striker. I'm going to get his name by the end of this show, but you know who I'm talking about. Those guys are the ones that I really see maybe breaking into one of the 2 11s at some point, maybe not to start, but will come in at some point. So I think there's going to be some squad rotation because this is what these are for. These are friendly matches. Technically, they do count towards FIFA rankings, but they really don't count in the grand scheme of a tournament. So you want to try out players. You want to see how the roster comes together, and that's why I do think there will be some rotation, but not a ton. I think Davies is going to be playing both games. I think David will probably play both games.
But if you're the coach, you would go with 2 similar starting 11s and then just work a couple guys.
Yeah, a couple guys in and out. Yeah.
Okay, got you. Okay, so then going back to your pick of Dane St. Clair, good pick. I think both Maxime and Dane are probably the 2 that are battling for the number 1 spot. I think it's very close between the 2 of them. And going with Dane, he's in great form with Minnesota. He's playing week in, week out. He has been for the last, 2 or 3 years. So respectable pick.
Yeah, and I would not be shocked if Crépeau and Dane both get 1 start in these 2 matches. I wouldn't be shocked at all. Yes, he's just trying to try things out ahead of the Copa, right?
That's where that question came from me.
I figured, and that's why I was saying it after, because I wanted to make sure I didn't just talk about the strikers. I was using them as an example, but that's where I would have the easiest bet. So
to the back line.
To my back line. I'm going 3 at the back, and This is an interesting position because there are a few guys that I want to see get in, but the three that I personally would choose if I was starting my 11.
Why three? Why are we going with the three in the back?
I think that this side has a really innate ability to have wing backs that can attack and defend. And I think that allows them to be a little bit more free in that movement. And that's why I would go three at the back. It just adds another body in the back that allows the wingers to get up and down a little bit more freely without having to worry about, oh man, if I go up here, I'm going to leave us without numbers at the back. Three at the back gives you that extra body immediately. So I think it gives a bit of a flexibility to a very talented wingback group. So that's why I'm going three at the back. And I'm going to start with Kamal Miller in the middle. I love Miller. I think he is the centerpiece of this back line right now. I know he hasn't necessarily been playing the best in club at the moment, but he's still one of the top players for Canada in the center back role. So he's my middle guy. On the right, I'm going Alistair Johnston, the man, the myth, the legend from Celtic, who had a fantastic season and won the domestic double. He is my right side of the back three. And on the left, I'm going with Moises Bombito, someone that might surprise some people. I've seen a lot of mocks put Derek Cornelius in the back. And there's also Luke de Figueroa from Fulham. Both of those guys I could easily see in this position, but I've really been impressed with Bombito this season. He stands up to everybody. He's not afraid to get stuck in on a challenge. And he's got some speed. So this is a guy that I want to put there. I know Miller's not necessarily the fastest, so having Johnston and Bombito on the sides, I think is the best way to utilize Miller in the middle and allow him to do what he does best. And these two guys have the ability to cover that lack of speed from Miller in these kind of situations. So that's my back three. You want me to just keep rolling along?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're the coach, so who am I to question? I'm just a fan at this point. You're the coach.
I know, but I like getting your opinion too.
If I'm Derek Cornelius and you're the coach.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, coach, I'm playing in Europe. I won the Swedish league. I think I should be starting over this MLS guy. Why? Why not me? I think I could play the middle, and I think you could put Kamal out left. Why not me?
And listen,
what do you say to Derek?
Yeah, and I would have that conversation. If we're talking right now, I think Bombito's a little bit quicker.
In your office.
Yeah, Bombito's a little bit quicker, and I think that allows Miller to be at his best in the center. But be ready to go because you're my first guy off the bench right now. I'd pick him over De Figueroa. Derek Cornelius is a very flexible guy along that back line. I could see him playing any of those three spots along the center back group. So to be honest, if he's coming to me and asking that question, it's, hey, I'm seeing what this roster has. I think it allows Miller to be at his best, and we want him in there. You need to be ready to go because if something doesn't work, you're my first guy coming off the bench. And if you can show me that you deserve it right then, you may never come off the bench again. That's what I'd be saying to him straight up.
I'm Derek. Okay. If the first game goes and Bombito looks a bit shaky,
or I'm
going to be giving you looks, and yep. My agent's going to be calling you because can you foresee then me getting a chance in the second friendly?
Absolutely. Okay. I can see him getting a chance in the second friendly. I actually think he starts one of the two friendlies regardless. Again, that's one of the players.
We're doing the role play now.
I know. But I'm taking that off for a second. I'm saying I could see him starting one of these two friendlies regardless, just because I think there will be rotation along that back because there is some really good talent. But if I'm talking straight to Derek again, absolutely. If that is the case, you come find me. We'll have a conversation, whether it's post-match or at halftime. We'll have that conversation.
Okay. And in the meantime, I'm just going to ball out in these training sessions. Show you why I should be starting.
Exactly, and that's what you want from a player like Derek Cornelius because he has the ability to, and I think he's going to be very good. Yes, we'll shake on it. Very good.
Thanks for taking the time, Coach. I'll see you at training.
So there it is. That's why I would have Bombito over Cornelius, but that's a very good question about whether or not he should be around it because I do think he has the ability to. In my opinion, Bombito's playing at a really, really high level. I want to see what he does alongside Miller and Johnston in that back line. Moving to my wingbacks now. With Larea kind of being hurt, this could change. But my wingbacks are Alphonso Davies on the left and Tajon Buchanan on the right. Now, these are higher wingbacks than we're probably used to seeing for the national team, but both of these guys have the ability to break apart teams with their speed and have become really, really solid defenders when they are in a defensive position. I love the look of these two guys. I love the fact that they're both always wanting to play for the national side every chance they get, and they've become really big parts of this team. So for me, these were easy choices with Larea being out. If Larea's out, my lineup might change, or if Larea's in, my lineup might change a little bit more. But if we're talking right now, these two guys are starting for me on the wing.
I'm trying to imagine being another player on that roster and having some questions, but if I'm any other wingback or wide player, I'm looking at your pick there and I'm like, that's fair.
Okay.
Coach knows what he's doing.
Yeah. That's one of those like, all right, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. If you're another player on the roster. So
don't get too cocky now, Coach.
I said those two. I have that one locked in. I'm happy with those choices. Up the middle, I have my two center mids. We're going to go with Stefan Eustáquio and Ishmael Kone. I don't think there's a whole lot of argument with this one. The midfield group is, I don't want to say weak, but they're very thin. He only brought 4 natural midfielders, and a couple of them aren't natural center mids. So it's a very thin group, and I think if you want the best out of this group, you're going with Eustáquio and Kone. Both played unbelievable when they've been on the pitch for their club this season. I know Eustáquio was dealing with a bit of an injury and ended up losing some time, but Kone was phenomenal for Watford. And I think these two together give Canada the best duo in the midfield that they could possibly ask for.
And defensively, are you kind of seeing them up and down or lower in a block? Or is Eustáquio having the freedom to play more offensive with Ishmael kind of cleaning up with being more athletic in the back?
So
how do
the
you
beauty of
foresee
this,
them? They're defensive.
Yeah, the beauty of this too, I actually love having them side by side to start with the ability to play more of a piston style. So whoever has the ball or whoever's on the attacking side, they can move up with the other one kind of coming in the back supporting, and then opposite. They can flip back and forth. I trust them both defensively, and I trust them both in an attacking position. So I would actually have them start side by side, be that kind of low block, and then piston up and down as the game kind of needed it, and possession dictated who should be going forward. So that's a great question. I love it, and I think that allows – the other thing it does allow is it allows you Alphonso Davies and Buchanan to go up and down a little bit more freely as well, because they know Kone and Eustáquio have the ability to play a little bit more defensive if the play suggests.
Kone gets injured in warm-ups. Who are you going in to replace him?
That's a
Liam
great
Miller.
question.
Do you go with experience and put Hoylett, or do you go with a destroyer and Piet, which also has experience?
Yeah. It's a great question. I would probably actually switch one of my other players coming up, so I don't want to like ruin that and move them into the midfield, and bring somebody else onto my 11. And I'll explain that in my next group.
Gotcha.
There are, as I said, there's not a whole lot of center mid or midfield depth on this roster. We're very attacking focused and wing focused with the announcement of the 26. So it's a very thin group. I would trust any of those guys that you did mention, but if I was going to pick one of the 3, I'd probably slide Piet in there and make him more of a defensive role and move Eustáquio up as the veteran, and then make some changes later in the game depending on cardio and fitness at that point, right? So if I had to go with one of those 3, that was probably where I would go.
Coach has got to be prepared for everything.
Yep, I agree. I understand that. Moving forward, my 2 attacking midfielders, and I want these guys to play a little bit more wide. I'm going with Jacob Schaffelberg and Jonathan Osorio. Now, I know a couple questions will arise here. Is Osorio naturally a wing guy? No, he's not. But I've seen him been playing it for TFC on occasion, and I like the way it looks because it also gives the ability, if Kone is on a run or if Buchanan makes a run down that right side, he can kind of drop into that middle attacking spot and become almost a 4-2-3-1 as the formation kind of adjusts around. It's a very flexible formation, which is great, and it allows Osorio to jump in. And on the other side, Schaffelberg, He's been playing lights out this year for Nashville. I've loved every minute that I've seen of him on the pitch. He has the energy, he has the pace, he can defend as well, which is one thing that I think is really important down that left side. If you're going to have Davies as your wingback, you need to have a guy who also can defend as the winger, and Schaffelberg is one of those players. Has played wingback in the past, more naturally a winger as we've seen. But if Davies is making overlapping runs constantly, someone's got to fill in that role. Schaffelberg can do that and do it comfortably. So that allows a lot of flexibility for the roster, and that's why I think Schaffelberg is the right guy on the left side. To answer your earlier question, Niko, if Kone or Eustachio were to go down injured in the pregame, I would move Osorio into the middle, and I would maybe bring on Kyle Larin or Junior Hoylett on that right side to pair with Schaffelberg on the left. Lots of veteran presence off of that. Hoylett more naturally a winger than a center mid, and Osorio more naturally a center mid for club than a winger. But I love Osorio in this wing position, and I do think it allows a lot of flexibility in the formation.
Bold both on Osorio playing a wide and starting Schaffelberg, but I like it. I think Schaffelberg could play a big role in this national team with this style of play.
Especially the style of play that Jesse Marsch likes to coach. I think Schafts is the perfect guy to play that style along the wing. All right, and then up front, we got two great options right out of the gate with Kyle Larin and Jonathan David. I'm leaning David on this one. I think Jonathan David is in form a little bit more. He had a better season for his club with Lille. Kyle Larin kind of brought it on at the end of the season, but the inconsistency has me a little worried. So I'd bring David in to start with Kyle Larin coming off the bench and being that kind of thunder lightning sort of style that we see from some teams. Larin has that ability, and I think he comes off the bench. But don't be surprised if I bring in a guy like Theo Bair, who's been lights out this year for his team in one of those three attacking positions, whether it's up front straight up or in one of the wing positions. I think this kid has a lot of talent, but I'm going with David to start.
Where is Ugbo? Is Ugbo
he's in the conversation. Listen, a lot of it comes down to training, and unfortunately, as the manager of this team, I'm not in training, so I can't really see it. But I would love to see what these guys are doing in training, because Ike Ugbo could also come in and be that kind of Theo Bair guy that I just said, where he could go across all three positions and have a bit of an impact. I still do think if we're going to go with our best up front, it's going to be Jonathan David, but there's so many options in those attacking three that are very, very exciting. I mean, you could even talk about the Minnesota kid, right? Like, there's so much talent up top that it's almost impossible to pick just one or just three of these guys to be on the starting 11. This is what I think allows Canada to be at their best. But honestly, taking a step back from Coach Nick for a second and being the media member fan Nick, I could see so much rotation over the next 5-6 matches with that attacking group. So don't be surprised if multiple guys get opportunities in these two friendlies with Jesse Marsch at the helm.
Sure. All right, let's see the graphic. Let's see the 11.
So this is the graphic. We got the full 11. And by the way, folks, Niko asked me earlier, the guys on the left are just the names of the players on the pitch. It was just a little bit easier to see them when I put them there. So that's why we did it this way. But yeah, Niko, I want to get your opinion. So I put my 11 out. I think this is a really solid and flexible lineup for Canada. Probably what I don't know if this is going to be the formation that Jesse Marsch necessarily uses, but this is my formation. I really love this because it does allow flexibility for all the wingbacks, all the wingers, even the center mids to do a little bit more movement along the pitch. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the biggest question mark I look in the back line is Derek Cornelius. Is he going to be able to break into the squad with the Herdman era? He was kind of in and out. Now I do think his career has more recently kind of popped off a bit more, which is why he's back in the fold. But with a new coach is a new chance. I think he's really hot and playing in a good level in Europe. I could maybe see him being on. But overall, you got your stars, the Alistairs, the Davies, your Jonathan Davids. So I think it's a good pick from you. I think you will have a happy locker room at the start because they'll view it as you are a fair coach, but it's all driven by results. And
Oh
you
yeah.
lose a couple games, your phone's ringing from agents, your door's being knocked from the players.
Oh yeah.
Uh, it's a brutal job being a coach.
And that's why I
But yeah,
could never do it. I could be an
well,
assistant. Assistant I could handle.
you hear that, Jesse Marsh? Nick McVicker's available. Dolly, he's coming for your spot.
That'd be fun. No, you're right, Niko. I agree with you that it's going to determine. Everything's going to be determined by results for this roster, and because of the flexibility that they do have, there's a lot that they can do. So I think this team has the ability to maybe surprise some people in the Copa with the talent that we have, and I'm excited to see kind of what happens over the next 2 friendlies, and on top of that, the first couple games of the Copa as well. So it'll be an interesting summer. We got a lot to talk about for this team moving forward. Good?
Let's run into the next one. Great job, Nick.
Appreciate
Like I said,
Appreciate
any
it.
high
And don't
school
forget, we
coaches
will do
wanna
this for
give
the
your
women's
starting?
side after. We will do this for the women's side ahead of the Olympics. Once we see
Am I
that
gonna
roster.
take? Am I gonna be the coach for that one, or are you gonna always stick to being the coach because
We'll
you
have
see
that
yourself as a
conversation. I'd kind of would
tactician?
love to see your coaching style with the women's side. So we'll have that conversation later. But speaking of the women's national team, they had 2 games this past week, Niko, and we did talk about it last week briefly. But they had their send-off series against Mexico, and they picked up not just 1 win, but they also picked up a draw with. Talk about the first match with goals from Leon and Lacasse. They picked up the 2-0 win in Montreal. First half a little bit slow, a little bit bogged up in the middle. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say there. It was a slow first half, but the second half, when they made some substitutions, they brought in the French connection, and they had a great little 2 goals. So I'm expecting more from this side. The 2-0 win against Mexico was great in Montreal, and then they followed that up with one that maybe wasn't as great. They did get a goal from Kadisha Buchanan, but it wasn't enough as they earn a late draw, Mexico does, against the Canadian side. What did you make of these 2 matches, Niko? And is there anything that you kind of wanted to see more of from this side?
I still stand by my original point where I don't think playing Mexico twice was the best test for this Canadian national team. And in saying that, going to this, I was hoping to see 2 wins and 2 convincing wins. The first one, 2-0, pull off a pen. A draw, both at home. A bit disappointing if I'm being a bit blunt. Again, it is friendlies. In the second match, slight rotation. So I do think Bev Priestman, this is her last chance to see what players she is going to bring to the Olympics. So I can understand that. A bit underwhelmed, if I'm going to be a bit critical on the 2 results. I would have liked them to play steeper competition, but I don't think they got the best. And in saying that, I was hoping for 2 big wins because, again, we're the defending gold medalists. We're going to the Olympics. I saw a much more convincing victory by the U.S. playing, in my opinion, a better South Korean side on the women's side. So when I'm thinking about going to the Olympics final tune-up game, am I confident going into it? No, I'm seeing other nations kind of taking that step up, but we'll see when the chips are on the table and it's the real deal. They're in the Olympics and the bright lights. Maybe these Canadian girls can just turn up and go back to back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And the one thing that Priestman did talk about was saying that this camp, these 2 games, were definitely used to help solidify who's going to be on that Olympic roster. It's a small roster. Let's not forget that. There was 26 players in this camp. They're only taking a roster of 18, which...
Yeah, what is that about?
I never understood that. I haven't understood that for years. And it's always been the same. It's tough. Like, you have to knock down... Usually it's 23 on a roster for most regular season stuff. I mean, obviously you have your reserves and everything, but like your actual roster is usually 23. I don't know why they go with 18. Maybe it's
Is
just
that an
because they're
Olympic
trying to
thing?
limit housing costs
No,
and stuff.
that would be
I'm just trying to figure
insane.
out why the Olympics would put the cap on it. You know what I mean? Like,
There's got to be an Olympic rule.
yeah, well, it is an Olympic
And
rule, but I'm just trying to figure out why. Like, what's the reason behind it? And I just don't know. And looking at it, like, if I'm looking at the roster right now, the only player who really solidified their spot that maybe was on the bubble was Awujo. She was fantastic. Outside of that, everyone who you'd expect to go is probably going. That's kind of the case right now. We might see Smith make the roster, but being that it's 18, it was tough for any of the players on the bubble to try to break into the Olympic roster just because it was 2 games. Like if we're talking like a 5-game sort of thing, maybe it's a little bit easier, but it's 2 games and there's only 18 spots, and this roster is very strong. So it's hard to kind of put your foot in the door when you're kind of on the outside looking in.
yeah, so I guess that only means 2 goalkeepers are
Yeah,
going to be selected, not the normal 3
absolutely.
for international tournaments.
Absolutely.
Fuck, you thought it was tough being Jesse Marsh for the men's national team. Beth Priestman got an even more difficult job.
I
Her
know.
door's going to be knocking. Her phone's going to be ringing for the next 2-3 weeks. What a nightmare.
It's going to be awful for her. I feel for Bev because this can't be easy. And you know that she's so used to having 23 or 26 player rosters, right? She's used to that. That's what every other tournament, every other camp is allowed. And now she has to take that and cut it down to 18 off of players that she has become accustomed to having around all the time. Like, that's got to be tough. That is not an easy thing to do. That's why they get paid the big bucks, but that's not easy. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Pay me the big bucks. I'll deal with these difficult problems. I'll tell a couple players they ain't coming to the Olympics. Boo hoo.
And I think there is like a reserve sort of team that may be traveling to the Olympics, but they're not actually listed as Olympians until like an injury or something occurs. If it does, knock on wood that there is none. But there has to be a way to get an extra body in if something like that happens, because it wouldn't be fair to only have 18. And let's say 2 players get hurt in the first match. Like you're down to 16 real quick, especially if it's a keeper.
Okay, so there is a roster of
I would have to
23
think
that
there
is
has
going
to
to be
be.
traveling.
I feel like there
That's
has
where
to
I'm
be.
confused. Okay, well, it's less difficult.
But is it? Like you still have to cut it down. Like I'm sure there's only 1 or 2 on that extra roster, like an extra keeper and an extra outfield player.
Probably a 23 roster. That's an extra 5 players that you ain't saying you're not coming. It's like you're coming, you're just on the reserves.
Well, that's
You're
the
on the
thing. I don't
resis.
know. I have no idea if
You're,
that's the case.
you're getting a vacation.
In
Getting a
Paris,
paid
not a bad
vacation.
place. So it'll be
Girls are
interesting to
buzzing.
see. What?
So the girls will be buzzing. I'd be
Yeah.
if Jesse Murray, Niko, you're gonna go on the national team, but you know what, you're not gonna play. You're just gonna have to be around the group, man. Jesse, no problem.
You will be the biggest
I'll,
cheerleader on the sidelines ever.
I will be the greatest teammate you will ever see.
Yeah, he's got a lot of keepers in his group right now, so it might be a lot harder. But so yeah, it'll be interesting to see who this roster ends up being. But from the women's national team to the women's national league, the Northern Soccer League brand is growing weekly now. We now have 2 brands in the mix as AFC Toronto showed off their new colors and logo. I love it. It looked really nice. I was at the launch party on Monday night. Got to talk with Helena Rukin, who we've had on the show before. She was fantastic. Got to talk with some of the supporters group, the Voyageurs, as well. Met the president and some of the other guys from the Voyageurs and some other people from in and around the AFC Toronto team. It was a great launch, a lot of fun. But Niko, there's a question that I want to pose to you as a CPL player, someone who's in and around the CPL. Should the CPL be concerned about the new women's league and the growth and the popularity it's already gaining before even kicking off?
I think they need to keep their eye on the Northern Super League. For one, they just came out with the news of their salary cap and their league minimum. And right away, you see people comparing it to the CPL salary cap and our league minimum. It's like, oh, the Northern Super League, they haven't even had a game yet. And they're going with a 50K as opposed to the CPL's 30K league minimum. So then it's like, oh wow, it kind of makes people look down on CPL, which does hurt the product a little bit. Also, I'm just thinking of, captivating the market. Um, CPL, I think, still hasn't tapped that Canada soccer market as well as it could. You don't see every stadium having the numbers that each club would like to have.
Hmm.
It's the brands, the logos, in my opinion, aren't recognizable enough, especially in certain markets. Um, so I feel that the CPL hasn't done the best job at captivating the Canada soccer market. And with where the world is at in women's sports, you see what the WNBA, the numbers it is getting, how many eyes it's attracting now. The PWHL did an incredible job
Oh, incredible.
captivating hockey fans in general, not just women's hockey fans.
Yep.
Both men and females are impressed and enjoying watching the sport. I think women's sports is the movement right now. So the Northern Super League coming in, um, it's a hot market, and I think if the CPL hasn't done a great job at capturing that soccer market, I think the Northern Super League is going to come in now, saturate the soccer market even more by bringing in 6 new professional soccer clubs. And are they going to be doing a better job at capturing uh, that audience, as well as capturing uh, corporate sponsorship,
Yep.
corporate dollars? That's what funds this league. That's what able to grow these leagues, especially at the beginning. You need those dollar bills coming in.
Yep.
And again, with the way the times are now, I think um, women's sports very progressive. It's somewhere where these corporations want to put their money in, not just for charitable reasons, but for the reason of it's popular. It's gaining more attention. It's hot right now. To quote Zoolander, women's sports is so hot right now. Um, that's why if I'm CPL, I'm kind of looking at it now. It's like, okay, like we might need to really be on our toes now so they don't run us over.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's two different. Not it's the same sport, but they're going to be competing and in similar markets as well. Is the AFC Toronto team? If all of a sudden in their first year they're averaging 4,000 a game at Lamport Stadium, people are going to be like, "What the hell? York can't even get 1,000 people consistently
Yeah.
at a game." Right away, legitimacy is going to go to the Northern Super League. So I'm curious just to see how CPL is going to respond with Northern Super League coming into the picture, and or is it going to force CPL to step up their game? Are they going to be pushing for a collective bargaining agreement for the players? Are they going to try to raise the professional standards within each club? It could have that effect as well, and it could be the best thing that could happen to CPL. But I'm curious how, with the Northern Super League coming in, how it's going to affect the CPL, and if right now, if CPL clubs are worried in any way of the Northern Super League coming in.
Yeah, and it's a fair question. And honestly, I'm on the side of I actually think this could benefit the CPL because if the market share is done right and you have like the teams in Vancouver sort of partner up and try to boost each other as opposed to compete with each other, there's a possibility that this could get more eyes on the CPL game. But you're right, there is the chance that, hey, oversaturation, a fan may only cheer for one side. And if that's the case and they lean towards the Northern Super League, that's another set of eyes that is not going to be on the league. It's a very fair question. And you're right, Niko. Clubs have to be keeping an eye, not necessarily be concerned just yet, but they have to be keeping an eye on what's happening in the Northern Super League, because if they don't, they're going to put themselves behind the 8 ball when this league does kick off finally in 2025.
If I'm the CPL, I'm trying to right away try to find a way to partner with the Northern
Yes.
Super League. Can there
Yes.
be some kind of collaboration between the two leagues? And yeah, that's how I would be looking to attack this,
I
and
would
not
agree.
trying to compete against them.
I would agree. And like you talked about the branding and how well they've been doing marketing themselves. I mean, listen, I have one of the NSL sweaters right here. Like I just got it. It's gorgeous. I got it at the event on Monday. Like they've done a great job getting their brand out there, getting everything out there. I'm going to decide because it's now in my way. They've done a really good job doing that, and they're going to be releasing more brands throughout the summer, and we're going to have all 6 logos and color schemes by the end of the summer. Like they're stationing it out so that they stay in the news cycle and not fall out of it. And I think that's a great thing for the league. I need to see more of that sort of thing from the CPL. Obviously, they're not, releasing brands anymore because they have all their brands, but maybe they need to do more getting in the news cycle in a different way. I don't know what that would be off the top of my head, but that's how you stay relevant. And the NSL has done a great job so far. The CPL in some locations maybe needs to do a little bit better in order to fend off some of the NSL's brand, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then I think of a media deal as well. Where is the NSL going to be shown? Where
Yeah.
are you going to be able to watch these games? If they're able to break into cable
The
in the
big
first
guys.
year, if they're able to break into cable the first year and CPL isn't able to, Northern Super League is going to take an advantage. So that could be again a play where CPL and Northern Super League combine and do a partner media deal. Try to get us both on cable, CBC, Sports Center, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's yeah. I'm curious.
It'll be interesting.
We're gonna get somebody from the Northern Super League on the show, whether it's next week or the following week. And this is going to be a question I'm going to be, poking at them and seeing what their thoughts are. And then after we speak to them, we need to get somebody from the CPL. Hopefully, we'll get the Mr. Commissioner back on, and then pose the question to him, like, are we going to be trying to collaborating with them, partner with them, or are we going to be competing at them? Hey boss, what's your mindset going into this? New kids on the block, how are we dealing with them? How are we sussing these guys out?
And it's so true, and that would be a great question to ask both sides. And the best part is that would be one of many great questions that we could ask both sides. So those conversations wouldn't be one topic. There's so much we could talk about with both leagues right now. So it would be fun to have both sides on.
And then hopefully they both agree that a partnership is what's best for both parties. And then we bring them in, boom, they come in, Diana comes in from one side, Mr. Commissioner Mark Noonan comes in the other. We're in the middle, we're posing questions back and forth, and we're able to broker the first ever partnership deal between the Northern Super League and the Canadian Premier League.
Maybe we do like a live on location show at some point and get them both in a room together talking about this. Maybe that's the way we go.
Set up cameras, hidden cameras, put them in a room.
No, not hidden cameras.
Lock the door.
Fully on camera. They know.
I had a crazy idea where we put Diana and
just throw them
Mark
in a room
Noonan
and make them
in
make
an office. Put them in a room. Oh, hey guys, put some sandwiches out, whatever they like. Maybe like some wine, some beer, and then we leave, lock the door, the cameras are rolling, and just see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to convince me on that one. You'll have to convince me on that one. I'm not as sold on that as you are. But we'll
crazy.
We'll have conversations about that later. But yeah, no, it is an interesting dynamic that we're going to have in Canadian soccer circles moving forward, with both of these leagues being as necessary as they are. It'll be interesting to see how they're kind of balanced in the Canadian fandom. If they're equally balanced, or if one kind of takes the reins and has more to say, I guess, in the grand scheme of things in Canadian soccer. It remains to be seen, Niko.
Quickly, the two brands now that we've seen, AFC Toronto and Calgary.
Yep.
What's the Calgary club called in?
The
Calgary
Wild.
Villains?
The Wild.
The Wild. Similar color schemes between the two
Yes, I
clubs.
was shocked by that.
Are all the teams going to have similar color schemes
No, I can't.
in
There's
the
no
first
way.
year?
That would make it very, very tough for jersey matchups.
Kind of how PWHL only didn't really
Well,
have
that's
brands the first year. They just had, Boston,
yeah, that's
Minnesota.
different. They threw that league together in the span of 6 months. The NSL has at least been formed. Like AFC Toronto was announced like a year ago, right? Like we had Helena Rukin on before we took our hiatus. So there's they've had time to put this brand together. So all the teams are going to come in with a brand in their own kind of color scheme. Will they all have similar colors? That's a great question. I hope not as a fan because you want to have the best rivalries are when you have like the Manchester Derby where half is red, half is blue. There's no crossover. Edmonton Oilers, Calgary Flames, the red and the blue. It's the best of both, right? Like you want to have that distinct divide. If you have every team being the same color scheme, it makes it very complicated. And if you just show a fan walking down the street with a red jersey, which team are they actually cheering for? You know what I mean? So I hope they all have different color schemes, at least.
Maybe that's what they're thinking. They all have the same color scheme. So it's like you see those colors together. It's like, they're supporting women's soccer, the Northern Super League.
Maybe I don't see it happening, but I see what you're saying.
If the next club comes out, it's the same color scheme. I'm taking that conspiracy theory. I'm taking that conspiracy theory to the moon.
You're gonna take that and run with it, aren't you?
No, I'm gonna get Thomas to tweet about it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Niko, let's move on to Twitter Watch. We don't have a lot to go into for Twitter Watch. In fact, we don't even have any graphics to go along with these stories, but we have a few stories we're going to talk about. So I want to start with one that's a little bit more sad. Unfortunately, there was a shooting in northern Etobicoke, and a 61-year-old soccer player passed away. You hate to see this kind of thing. It was post-match beers for men's league, and 5 players ended up getting shot. 1 died. 4 other in non-life-threatening injuries were taken to hospital. Just kind of a sad day in and around the GTA when you see stories like this. And we only bring it up because it is kind of soccer related. We hated to see it. And I shared it with you, and you're like, yeah, no, we need to bring this up on the show. So our thoughts and prayers are with his family and the rest of the men still dealing with their injuries in the hospital.
Yeah, well said.
Appreciate
The
that.
best part of the game as well, post-game beers with the
Just
fellas.
post-game anything. It doesn't have to be beers, but post-game breakdown with the team, that is the best part of men's league soccer. I mean, I'm just experiencing it myself, so it is by far the best part of men's league soccer, and to have that ruined by something like this those guys will not be able to go for a post-game beer for a while without having flashbacks of that game, which is not fair. Not
sure.
fair to them and not fun for anybody involved. So just a sad day. Another thing we wanted to bring up, there's been a change to the League One Ontario rules this year, and it's caused a bit of a stir in Ontario footy circles where they've implemented minutes quotas for different ages. Now, I'm going to read off the rules so that we can each be on the same page here, Niko. The rules are that U23 players in the men's, women's, Premier, and Championship divisions need to play at least 41% of each team's total minutes, so almost half have to be U23 players, so anyone under the age of 23 and under. There's also a separate quota in the men's Premier introduced this year and will also be introduced in the women's moving forward, that 500 minutes must be met by U20 players. So that comes out to roughly 7% or something simple like that, or 10%, sorry. And this has caused a bit of a stir moving in the League One circles because there's been talks of fans and players being very upset that managers are now having to focus on youth and development over results for some of these teams. Some of the more experienced teams are obviously the ones that are having the hardest time adjusting to these rules. Niko, what do you think about having a player minutes quota for these age groups in League One right now?
Well, I think it's funny that people are talking about it in a negative, because all I hear is how awesome it is how the CPL has this U21 rule, and every single week you get the standings of where the teams are
Yep.
on the table, and then CPL posts who the standings for who's played the most young people, and everyone's just talking about how awesome it is. This is first division football, and we're just as concerned about the table as how many U21 minutes each club has had. So for me, I think if you're gonna put an age minutes rule prioritizing on developing the youth, it should be in League One, in the lower leagues of the pyramid. So it makes sense for League One to Ontario to implement this. I got no problems with it, but if they're gonna do this, get rid of the U21 rule in the CPL. I think it's ridiculous. Tons of players think it's ridiculous. Managers in this league thinks it's ridiculous. When you get international managers that come here and they're trying to now balance out how many U20, they think it's ridiculous. This is first division football. The only thing that should matter at this level is winning. And some teams are dealing with a playoff battle, but they're also trying to see, man, I got to play this kid that doesn't necessarily deserve to play, but just so I can meet this 2,000 minute quota. It's stupid. So I like it in League One Ontario. Keep it in there. But if they're going to implement it in all of the League One Canada, and then get rid of the U21 rule in the CPL. That's what I would do. That's my thoughts about it. And I'm okay with it being in League One in Canada. For me, it makes much more sense having that rule in League One Canada as opposed to in the CPL.
I agree with you on that point. My issue with this rule, and hear me out before you jump on me, I think it's too many minutes right now. Because if we take the 2,000 minutes in the CPL, right? Do you know what percentage that accounts for total minutes in a season?
I don't.
It's 7.2% of the total season has to be played by U21s. 2,000, I took 28 games, 90 minutes times 11 players, right?
Got you. Share your work.
Right, I'm sharing my work. So it's around 7% of the minutes have to be played by U21 players, which when you're playing and trying to win the games is a lot. I get that. I'm not arguing that point. They're making U23 and below play 41% of the minutes. That is a lot of minutes for players, especially when you get down to it. U23, it's only 2 years older than U21, so maybe you're adding a little bit more experience, but 41% is a lot. You're losing out. All these guys that are in their late 20s, maybe at the beginning of their early 30s, they're immediately getting pushed out just because they have to. You're basically having to start half your 11. 5 out of your 11 guys have to be under 23 and play 90 minutes if you want a chance every game to knock that number down, unless you're going to start full 11s of U23s at the last 5 games of the season to meet your quota. You know what I mean? That's a big percentage. I think it needs to drop down. Maybe we need to look at 20 or 25% being U23 players to allow for that development while still competing and having that goal of results-driven league. It just seems like a big number to me with 41%. I don't know, Niko. I tried to show my work, but that's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah, it could be, especially for the beginning. But again, I still stay with, if it's going to be anywhere, League One Canada.
I agree. It should be League One Canada. There's no doubt about that from me. But
so you agree the U21 rule in the CPL is stupid?
Now that we have League One Canada set up, yes, I do. Right? Because I think
2,000 minutes is ridiculous. If anything, if you want to have it for all these guys that are probably going to jump on my back, drop it down at least 1,000 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking 500 to 1,000 minutes, have it required so that there is some youth being automatically injected into the lineup, but it doesn't need to be 2,000, and I don't think the 41% for League One makes any sense. I think that needs to be closer to 20%. If you want to do it, but do it at a reasonable amount so that teams can still focus on the results while getting youth involved in the game. Like, you can't just force youth in and expect results. It's not going to work that way unless you get super lucky one year and get 5 of the best youth players in the area to join the team at the same time. It's not a guarantee. There's no way to do that in League One, but there's a chance. I still think results driven, you need that veteran experience, and having 41% of your minutes have to go to guys under the age of 23 is just ridiculous to me. It's just too much. I don't think getting those guys in is a bad thing, but getting that much time guaranteed doesn't help them in any way.
Sure. I got nothing else to add on that.
I don't either. So let's move on. Game of the week. Niko, you get us kicked off this time. So your game of the week this week is?
I think it's very fitting after speaking to Thomas, York United, the big coaching change. Why not focus on my match this week? York United hosting Vancouver FC. Kind of a 6-pointer. If York beats us, that we're tied on points.
Yep.
If we're able to get the win, then we give us a little bit of that cushion after we kind of dropped the ball this past week in Winnipeg. So that's what I'll be watching, quite literally.
Maybe playing. Who knows? I'm hopeful. I'm a very hopeful person for you, my friend. No, that's going to be a really fun match to watch. I'm really excited. I'm trying to get out to it. We'll see if I'm able to. Again, we have a lot of stuff going on in my family that I have to deal with, but hoping to get out to that match and see you there, buddy. For me, I'm kind of going off the board a little bit. I'm foregoing the CPL match, and I'm foregoing the MLS matches this week because, well, there's no Canadian teams playing in the MLS this week, so that kind of helped me forego the MLS. I'm going with the Canadian men's team playing France. I'm really excited for this match. I think this is going to be a really interesting one to judge how far off Canada is when it comes to playing against the top clubs. France was so close in the World Cup. Extra time, and they just couldn't pull it out against Argentina. This is one of the top teams in the world. You're playing Netherlands on Thursday night, tomorrow night, and then you get a couple days, and then you play France. How are you able to adjust? How are you able to get the right 11 out on the pitch? I'm very interested to see how Jesse Marsch goes, and this is going to be a big test. So that's why I'm very excited to watch this match, and I think it's going to be a really good one.
Great pick. Me too.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's all we got this week, dude. We are done. And thank you, Thomas Hewitt, for joining us earlier in the show to talk about the new head coach. We will post my mock 11 on all of our socials, as well as some clips and stuff from this week. Anything you want to add before we head out, Niko?
No, I was just thinking there of Thomas. He just amazes me in grade 9. I am Dutch ovening myself, and this guy's covering the game of soccer at such a high level. It's just so impressive. So cool. So it's also cool how the CPL gave so many players like myself opportunities to play professionally, maybe extend our careers. But it's also given so much opportunity to a kid like Thomas, who's found his own pathway within it, and it is now growing with the league. So cool story there.
The crazy
Glad
thing
we were
even
able
more,
to highlight both sides.
Yeah, the crazy thing even more for me is that he wasn't even really a footy guy prior to going to that match 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And now he's become one of the up-and-coming writers in Canadian soccer media. Like, that's crazy to me, man. That's really cool.
We never asked him what game it was. Was it the season opener of 2022?
Yeah, we didn't ask him that. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate because
want to know how we did. Like, what was it? Did we lose? Did we win? If we lost,
I think it was just like, I will say he said he was with the Northern Corridor. They have fun, right? So maybe it was just the atmosphere being around that supporters group. Just got him hooked, which is great. Regardless of what it is, he's done a fantastic job. We got very lucky to have him on today, and we'll hopefully get him on again the next time York makes some big moves, or maybe they'll be bottom or top of the table soon, and we'll have to talk about them.
Next time York's in the headlines, we're getting Thomas.
Exactly.
We'll bring our
Thomas
York
back
United
on.
insider.
Yeah. So other than that, thank you for listening, everybody. Make sure you follow us on social media at Footy First Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can find that below if you're watching live. If not, make sure you head over to YouTube and subscribe. You can also get our podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast, Apple, Twitter, iHeartRadio, all of the fun stuff. Spotify as well. I don't know why I said Twitter. Force of habit. Apple,
Also
Spotify,
X.
and iHeartRadio. You can get your favorite podcast there, and we will make sure we are back next week sometime to talk a little bit more and recap the 2 Canadian men's national team games, as well as some CPL action. And who knows, maybe we'll have another NSL brand release their logo and colors. We'll have to see. But until then, thank you for watching, everybody, and we see you next time.